Good evening. Welcome to the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. It is day 16. It is Art Day. And so this is always an interesting day. Finding books or pulling out books that we have from our own collections that are related to art. And I was in a bit of a quandary because my books are all packed up and um, I had to do some research and find something that would grab your interest as well as mine. And there's plenty out there. And so I had to make a choice. And so I decided to do something. Um, our selection for today um, is American, and so I think it'll be very interesting to you, simply because of its historical impact, but also because of the currency of what this book addresses from an art's perspective. And so it is the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. My name is LD Robinson, and I like to remind you that what we do here is we give voice to words written by Black people all around the world, and we do it for educational and and literacy purposes. We bring books before you because we want to show the vast array of books that are written by Black people around the world, in every genre, every category, um, we have contributed. And so that is what we are doing here. And we partner with Fresh Book Festival that believes that literacy is a legacy. And so we want you to follow Fresh Book Festivals and visit Fresh Conversations, follow it online and on YouTube. They have a channel. And so you will not be disappointed by the spectrum of literature that is reviewed and talked about in conversation um, with its host, Donna Gray Banks. And so today is Art Day. It is day 16. And once again, we are borrowing time from other time zones that are behind us in the Eastern time zone. And so it's been a busy day today. And so we don't want to miss reading because there's more for us to do because day 17 is upon us. And but we're reading day 16 and it's art. And our selection for today um, is it's art, and our selection for today is Unseen, Unpublished Black History from the New York Times Photo Archives. And this book came out a few years ago, and it really is quite enlightening. And so I highly encourage you to add it to your library. And we are going to talk about, we're going to read the introduction. Before we do, we want to remind you that you should follow us online at Black Read Aloud. You should also go to our website and subscribe at greatblackreadaloudday.org, where we keep the current reading list there. So what we read last year is online, but also what we're reading this year is updated nightly after we're done reading, and you can see the books that we have reviewed and brought before you here at the International Great Black Read All Day, or TIGBRAD as we call it. And so today our selection is Unseen. It is the unpublished Black history from the New York Times Photo Archives, written by Darcy Eveleigh, Dana Canedy, Damieh Cave, and Rachel L. Swarns. Okay, and excuse me one second. Um, we're going to make sure that we are correct with names. How about that? I see an error here. And so we just want to make sure that we are correct. And I think that was my eyes. I did have my glasses on, but apparently not well enough. So we are uh, back here. Let's see. Let me go back here and see what I got here. Okay. Had a little technical difficulty there, so we're back down. Okay. All right. Our selection today, as we said before, it is day 16. It is our selection is Unseen, the unpublished Black history from the New York Times photo archives. And we're going to read the introduction. And this is by journalist Rachel Swarns. Each photograph on these pages will take you back to the charred wreckage of Malcolm X's house in Queens just hours after it was bombed, to a packed church in Greenwood, Mississippi, where Medgar Evers inspired African Americans to dream of a day when their votes would count, to Lena Horne's elegant penthouse on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, to a city sidewalk where schoolgirls jumped rope while the writer Zora Neale Hurston cheered them on behind the scenes. These stunning images from Black history, drawn from old negatives, have long been buried in the musty envelopes and crowded bins of the New York Times archives. Unseen and unpublished for decades, they are gathered together in this rare collection for the very first time. Our photographers for the Times captured these scenes and many, many more. They snapped pictures of pioneers in Hollywood, in hip hop, and in sports. Prominent figures such as James Baldwin, Thurgood Marshall, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and ordinary people savoring the joys of everyday life. They illuminate stories that were never told in the newspaper and others that have been mostly forgotten. Yet, as you look at these images and read the stories behind them, you may find yourself wondering, as we did, how did they languish unseen for so long? Were the photographs, or the people in them, not deemed newsworthy enough? Did they not arrive in time for publication? Were they pushed aside by words in an institution long known as the Gray Lady, or by the biases of editors, whether intentional or unintentional? The reality is that all these factors probably contributed. As journalists, we strive for objectivity and impartiality as we question and portray the world around us. Yet we rarely turn the lens on ourselves. At a time when concerns about the persistence of the racial divide simmer across the country, it is worth considering how we as an institution have depicted African Americans in our pages and at times erased them from view. The New York Times is known today as a leader in photography, with a team of staffers and freelancers who bring vivid pictures to our readers from war zones in Afghanistan and the Middle East, elementary schools in Harlem, and county fairs during hotly contested presidential campaigns. The newspaper has won 9 Pulitzer Prizes for photography, 7 of them in the 2000s. But we have not always valued images so highly. For most of the 20th century, the Times had only a small staff of photographers. The first was hired sometime after 1910, and nearly all of them were based in New York City. As a result, most staff photographs depicted local events, though the Times also bought pictures from freelancers and studios in other parts of the country and overseas. The Times' picture agency, Worldwide News Photo Service, which has staff members in London, Berlin, and elsewhere, was sold to the Associated Press in 1941. In those early days, we put a premium on words, not pictures, which meant that many photographs that were taken were never published. It is likely, however, that some holes in coverage reflected the biases of some editors at the Times, which has long been known as the newspaper of record, who determined what was newsworthy and what was not, at a time when Black people were marginalized in society and in the media. How did these photographs languish unseen for so long? After months of searching through our archives, we could not find a single staff photograph of the scholar W. Du Bois or Romar Bearden, one of the country's preeminent artists, or Richard Wright, the influential author of Native Son and Black Boy. The Times did publish a handful of photographs of these men taken by freelancers, friends, or private studios. Sarah Lewis, an assistant professor of history of art, architecture, and African American studies at Harvard University, said this is no surprise. given the nation's long history of demeaning and ignoring the visual narratives of Black people. In the 19th century, when photography was born, scientists used photographs to support racist theories of white superiority. The camera became an instrument of denigration, Lewis said, as pictures of slaves were taken to try to prove that blacks were a separate and subhuman species. At the same time, though, Black photographers were using their cameras to depict what the white world had so often failed to see, the beauty in their communities. Frederick Douglass and Du Bois believed that African Americans could harness the power of the new technology to capture the dignity and accomplishments of Black people and document events that would otherwise go unrecorded. Douglass, the runaway slave, abolitionist, and statesman, argued that, quote, moral and social influence of pictures, end quote, was even more important in shaping national culture than, quote, the making of its laws, end quote. Pointedly challenging the notion of Black inferiority, Du Bois displayed photographs of Black businessmen, craftsmen, homeowners, clergymen, university students, musicians, laborers, and well dressed men, women, and children of all hues at the Paris Exposition in 1900. He noted that the Negro faces he presented at the World Fair, quote, hardly square with conventional American ideas, end quote. It was important to create a new vision, said Deborah Willis, who chairs the Department of Photography and Imaging at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts of Du Bois's efforts. It was about power, said Willis, who has written about Du Bois and the Paris Exposition. Images are both empowering and disempowering. That holds true even in modern times, as concerns remain about media outlets that continue to view communities of color primarily through the lens of criminality and social dysfunction. One photograph in this book brings that point home. It depicts Black demonstrators protesting outside the New York Times in 1971, complaining that the newspaper was more interested in reporting on, quote, Black violence, end quote, than on Black productivity, quoted. But this extraordinary trove of rediscovered images reveals that our photographers captured more than that. They were witnesses to history, capturing the bullet holes in the Chicago apartment where Fred Hampton, the Black Panther leader, was killed by the police, the hopeful faces of two children, one Black and one white, in an integrated classroom in New Jersey, and a rare image of Martin Luther King Jr. during a visit to New York City. Consider the close up of King and what it reveals about what we know, and think we know about how images are made and edited. The photograph has appeared many times over the past 50 years, as date stamps on the back of the print clearly show, and it looks like it may have been taken during a formal sitting. That was not the case. It was instead taken on June 30th, 1963, when King had participated in a roundtable that was broadcast on NBC, a period of relative calm in an otherwise tumultuous day when Black protesters hurled eggs at King as he arrived at a church in Harlem. Earlier, he had criticized Black nationalists, saying those who called for a separate Black state were, quote, wrong, end quote. Some believe those remarks inspired the attack that night. Our photographer, who went uncredited, captured images of the NBC discussion, and an editor later cropped one of them to create the close-up of King that is now so familiar. I would show you the photo, um, but I think will leave that alone. We don't need New York Times scholars. And so disconnected from the turbulent events of that day. Many of the other photographs and their stories are equally intriguing. But the collection featuring both photographs and stories that were part of an online Black History Month project at the Times in 2016, and dozens of new images never published until now, is far from comprehensive. Our archive is vast. It contains 10 million prints, roughly half of which are believed to have been taken by staff photographers, and more than 300,000 sacks of negatives. The filing was sometimes idiosyncratic, so additional images may still be unearthed. The photographs that have already emerged offer revealing glimpses of historic moments and a glorious array of people who are at times joyful, heartbroken, outraged, purposeful, and finally visible. Sarah Lewis says there is, quote, an aspect of redemption, end quote, to this kind of work. As journalists, we view it as simply doing what we should always strive to do, bringing diverse faces, voices, and stories to our readers in all of their fullness and complexity. And that is from our selection today, which is Unseen, um, Unpublished Black History, the New York Times Photo Archives. And the photographs in this book are, I'm quite mindful of some of the things that we still ask about. You know, when we see, if you're watching daily news and you see images that are there, and you think there are so many more images of Black people in America, Black people on other continents and in other countries, that can be shown, but the persistence of showing certain images lingers. And so, get out your phones, take those selfies and create memories and make those images. Create that art that may only be uniquely your family. It may only be uniquely your friends, but create that art. They matter. As someone who works with families in trying times, the transition of loved ones, your photographs matter, and you want images that show your life, that show the different seasons of your life. And so, um, capture the moments. Be very visible in your own life. We have at our disposal something that other generations did not have, and that is digital technology to be able to take photographs, save photographs, archive them very easily and not in sacks. We can get a flash drive and store thousands of photographs on them now, and be able to recall them at any point in time. So be visible, capture the moments with yourself, capture the moments with your children, and create your own kind of art that embellishes your walls, that embellishes your telephone, and that uniquely describes your life in different points and times. And so this is day 16, Art Day of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. Our selection today has been Unseen, Unpublished Black History from the New York Times Photo Archives. Wherever you are in the world, make your own history. Okay? Make your own history with your own art. Um, leave your own mark. And that's what we'll say. And leave your mark through literacy. This is the International Great Black Read Aloud Day, where we are giving voice to words written by Black people all around the world. And we're going to put up some recommendations this year, something we haven't done. Just some additions to our reading list. We'll put it. We or certainly will keep our regular reading list, but we'll put some things up in case you want some literature around certain things, because there's so much out there from authors all around the world, and we believe that you will find those things interesting as well. And we hope you are enjoying this year's Read Aloud. And we will see you tomorrow for day 17, which is, you think, I've been doing this every night, you think I'd have this list all damn. So tomorrow is day 17, and it is adventure. And so that will be very interesting because adventure comes in so many ways. And I believe last year our adventure selection was The Watsons Go to Birmingham, which is always a fun book to listen to. It is not our selection for this year, although it would be nice, but it's packed up. So we have another selection that we believe you will enjoy for tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow here at the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. Have a wonderful day or a wonderful morning if your day is already started. My day is ending. And I'm going to say good night. Good night, y'all.